but they didn't eat it. It's the cup that's empty that they have consumed all that royal jelly, so they're more likely to be a better queen. And I don't have an opinion on that. I don't know. To me, I'm thinking I want my pantry to be full of food rather than empty of food, just in case I need it. But then on the other shoulder is this other little imp that's saying, yes, but what if that other one was full? Do you know that other one was not full to begin with? And the answer is no. I wasn't looking at it at day 6 or day 7.
It don't change your opinion whatsoever.
It don't change my opinion at all. And my opinion reverts back to a statement that I made yesterday, that any queen is better than no queen. And I've later in the summer, these cells will not be this long. They'll be this long. Little peanut cells. And it has to do with shorter days, older bees, and they're less inclined to want to reproduce the colony. Our bees are making queens not just for the sake of making queens. They're making queens for the sake of reproducing the colony or perpetuating the colony. And once you get past mid-July, they change. And the popular term for that is they become winter bees. Well, that some of you guys may have figured out, I'm not much into catchphrases. I'd rather just say they're the bees that have quit focusing on reproduction and are now focusing on survival. And if you want to call it a winter bee, I don't care what you call it. It don't change the fact of what they're focusing on. And that's the whole issue. And when you start seeing these short cells, that's a sign. The short cells will have darker wax because the bees are not producing. They have changed the energy that they're consuming. They're consuming protein. They're consuming nectar and carbohydrates. That energy has stopped going to wax glands and started going to the fat bodies. And that usually happens mid-July to early August is when you'll start seeing that in queen cells. And raising queens, there's several little things like that you realize that this is a milepost in the season. That all of a sudden you put that stake down, this is a milepost. They've stopped being keen on producing queen cells. You can still force them to make queen cells. There won't be as many, and it doesn't matter how young a bees that you put in there. You won't make as many queen cells, and they won't be the same quality of queen cells, because even young bees, they're redirecting the nutrition that they're taking in, and it's not going to the hypopharyngeal gland and not going to the wax glands. It's going to the fat bodies. So that's how you know that the switch has been flipped, is when you start seeing these short cells with darker comb on them, and they're stealing that comb, stealing that wax from somewhere else in the hive to make the cells. But
that's your indication of when to stop grafting?
You don't have to stop grafting then, but that's your indication to know that that fun's over now. You know, that up until then, everything's easy. In April, everybody can be a great beekeeper. In August, everybody is a terrible beekeeper. Just because of the bees are not wanting to do what we want them to do. We want to force nature to do what we say nature needs to do. And nature's saying, I'll do it, but you ain't going to enjoy this. And that's the whole case. for that. You can raise queens as long as there are eggs, fertilized eggs being laid in a hive. You can raise queens, but your success rate is going to go down beginning usually around mid-July, about a month after summer solstice. Your success rate is going to start going down. And it's not that you have to stop raising queens, it's just that you need to realize that it's not you. When you get fewer queen cells, it's not you. Now, this little part of the conversation all started when I was thinking about those little short queen cells. And I've had queens made from those that are kind of runt. They look like a runt. Well, you look at them a month later after they've been laying eggs, they're not a runt anymore. They have developed, their abdomen has elongated, they've developed into a decent looking queen, and they're laying plenty of eggs. It's not that they can't lay eggs or they can't produce like a longer bodied, a big cell, the queen that came out of a cell. It's that their usable lifespan will be shorter. They won't lay 2,000 eggs a day. They'll lay 1,000 eggs a day, but they will also not lay eggs for 6 months running. They'll lay eggs for 3 months running at the best. And they'll be superseded earlier. But it's what I said. Any queen's better than no queen. Those little runt cells, they share the same genetics. If you grafted all from the same queen, they share the same genetics as the big long cells. Graft and make another queen if you don't like that one. But your cell quality is going to go down later. The later in the summer it gets, and there's a lot of reasons that I encourage people to raise some of their own queens, and one of them is how well it tunes you with nature, because you're going to be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. If you raise queens throughout the summer, at some point you're going to say, this is what they were talking about up there. These cells just don't look look good. What did I do wrong? You didn't do nothing wrong. It's just that bees are not in the notion of raising queens anymore. Not because that they're thinking I'm done working for this fool. It's not that. It's that the daylight hours are shorter. And on the Gulf Coast in Mississippi, we can raise queens all the way into November, late November. Thanksgiving, we could still raise queens down there. They don't really go into storing fat, storing food for fat bodies, but for about a month. But they will go into that because the days will eventually shorten up enough that that the queens will or the bees will stop making good queen cells. That usually happens around Thanksgiving and starts back around the end of January. Whereas it happens here by the 1st of August and starts back about the end of January. It comes back when we start getting fresh pollen. We get fresh pollen from maple trees here. The first 4 or 5 warm days in January, we'll have a maple bloom. And it always turns cold after that, freezes everything out, But that one hit of fresh maple pollen and nectar will kick the queens into gear. And I used to put a pollen patty on first of January every year. And then I realized that I'm not doing any favors to these bees, because they're going to start up in another 3 or 4 weeks anyway. And if they have a false barometer of when they need to start, then I'm becoming an enabler and not a husbandry. It's not husbandry anymore, it's enabling. And so knowing that we're going to have a maple bloom second week of January this year. It was a little bit earlier. Then it turned really cold, and I thought, well, they'll probably all die now, after, because the queen will start laying. She lays in a little spot away from where the food is. The bees will not leave that brood, and they starve out. After 3 or 4 days of cold weather where they can't move, they starve out. And I lost about 6 hives, but six hives out of 294. I didn't feel too bad about it because I lost a few more that should have been fed again that I didn't get around to feed. And I felt bad about that for about 30 minutes. I got over it.
Is that with your famous sugar recipe?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I know that that's what it was because when I found that dead out when I was going through them this spring, they had eaten up through the center of that sugar patty, and it was a dead cluster right there at the top of that sugar patty where they'd eaten up through it. It was too cold for them to move to the perimeter of the sugar patty, and it's my fault. I mean, and I have a legitimate excuse for not doing that. A medical thing with I couldn't lift because I had eye surgery in September, and I couldn't lift more than 20 pounds until the 3rd week of March. So I had, I think, 3 eye surgeries. But anyway, I couldn't lift until. It doesn't matter how legitimate your excuse is. It's kind of like Bren was saying, there's no more dead than dead. My excuse don't keep them from being dead. So anyway, that's why I felt bad about it for about 30 minutes. And I thought, well, I grew up raising tobacco. And like every kid that grew up in Graves County grew up raising tobacco, milking cows, and hauling hay. And once in a while when we were hoeing tobacco, I worked with my granddad every day with it. Once in a while, I'd make a mislick and cut a plant down. When plants were that tall and we was hoeing the grass out from around them. And I would fuss about it, cut a plant down, knowing that was $2 at the end of the year. Is 2,500 plants per acre, and I cut one of them down, and that represented $2. And if I cut enough of them down, it's coming out of my pocketbook. And my granddad told me once, he said, you cut that down in May, but in August, you'll be happy that you cut that plant down. That will be a break that you can stretch your back out while we're cutting this tobacco. That'll be a nice place for a break. But then he would back that up by saying, don't cut any more of them down. And that's the way I feel about the 8 hives that died from starvation. That's just some that I won't be hurting my back lifting the heavy super off of this year.
Question for you from your experience over the years. We sometimes hear about people wanting overwintered queens, or queens which are basically being raised after the summer solstice, supposedly not swarming the following spring.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about some of these?
Overwintered queens. All of these hives out here have overwintered queens. Some of them I started from splits. Half of these hives out here were not here. They were made from splits. They were all split. 3rd and 4th week of March, roughly a month ago. These hives were all 4 and 5 frames of bees, every one of them. And if you've been in any of them, you see what they look like. There's some of them that are still 5 frames of bees. Is a queen that just didn't perform the way I thought she should. Most of them have just blown up in population. All of them were produced with overwintered queens, every one of them. None of them were this year's queens. And overwintered queens are really good for starting off quick in the spring because they have the program down. They understand about laying eggs, producing a lot of brood, staying in the brood nest, not being crazy and a little here and a little there and a little over here and 2 frames over this little bit. Overwintered queens know the drill. Young queens, a brand new queen, they may not start as fast as an old queen. Some of them are gonna lay multiple eggs in cells. Some of them will be superseded because of that. Old queens are almost never superseded if they start off and do things right. If the old queen does not start laying like she should, she will be superseded. That's not the common thing. Sometimes they don't start right off, but when they start, it's on. I mean, they lay lots of eggs because they're good at it. They know the program. Young queens, not so much. Um, they're a little less likely to swarm, but it's not a guarantee. Um, they are much more likely to be superseded after the first major honey flow. So a young queen is going to stay in the hive, give you a longer run as far as before the bees decide to supersede her or before the hive swarms. An old queen is going to be a queen that was produced the year before is going to be better up till June. After June, it's going to switch. Your young queen will be a better performer. Your old queen will be on the decline. As soon as forage stops, the old queen is going to start slowing down a lot, and she's probably going to be superseded at that point because daylight hours are too long and the queen's not producing. Yeah.
Do you let that supersedure happen naturally, or do you try to stop it?
Well, saying that I let it happen naturally indicates that I got my thumb on it all the time, and yeah, I'll let the supersedures happen because most of the time I don't see it coming until it's already happening. And I don't care. That's fine with me. Uh, when you recognize that there's been a brood break, and if you see a torn down queen cell or a queen cell that has the flap open on it, or one that's been chewed up, or that the bees have chewed the thing down after the queen emerged, if you see that, you've probably had a supersedure. Good reason to mark queens so that you know that you've had a supersedure. And let it happen. Mark the hive and go forward on the calendar 24, 25 days, depending on how long the brood break. You can tell how long the brood break is. No eggs, large larva, it's about a 7 or 8 day brood break. Uh, small eggs, no larva, you got a 10-day brood, or 10-day brood break. But pupa, if there's no pupa but there's larva, you've got an 11-day brood break. So calculate when you can come back and treat with oxalic acid, because you can use that when there's a honey super on. It's very quick, and when there is no capped brood in the hive, it is very effective for varroa mites. So it's almost like spot treating. If you've got, I can do that here because we hardly ever have more than 400 hives here. I can do that here by spot treating and going through a bee yard and seeing on the lid a calendar date with a T next to it, knowing that I need to treat on that somewhere around that date. I can do that here without it being too big of an imposition. We can't do that in Mississippi. There's too many hives down there. But for most of you guys that have 10, 20, 50, 100 hives, you can do that and kind of spot treat and get a handle on varroa, at least in that hive. And that might be the hive you raise queens out of the next year, because the rest of them may not be anything you want to raise queens out of. So yeah, I let them supersede now the disclaimer on that: if I don't like that hive, I'm not letting them supersede. I'll tear the queen cells down or catch the new queen and mash her if I don't like that hive. If the queen don't suit me, if their attitude don't suit me, I take it out on the queen.
What is the criteria? What are the criteria you're looking for that makes you decide that this hive, that's it?
Being extremely nervous on the comb. They don't have to be. They don't have to be vicious or anything. If I'm pulling the comb out and the bees are all just running off of it, I'm not letting that genetic stay in the bee yard.
What's the problem with these bees being that, let's say, hyperactive?
That is one of the early symptoms of Africanization. And it don't mean your bees are Africanized. It just means that they have developed this as a survival mechanism. Just like the Africanized bees developed that as a survival mechanism. And I don't want that perpetuating into the next stage. The next stage is excessive swarming or just absconding when there's no honey flow. And the final stage of Africanization is when the drone pool gets saturated and you do have vicious bees. That's the final stage. So if they're runny on the comb or extremely nervous on the comb, I'm not keeping that queen. I'm not raising queens from them. And I'm for sure not moving them out where the drones are going to mate with the queens from my mating yard.
Hey, Kent,
Yep.
are those bees more likely to be temperamental during the dearth?
Yeah, they are. That they will be even more nervous on the comb during a dearth because that is the next stage of Africanization. Because during a dearth, Africanized bees leave; they just abscond. So yeah, they're going to be more anxious, more temperamental during a dearth. And if you keep breeding from that genetic, eventually means 5, 6 generations, you can count on 7 generations out. That's what it takes to go to the next step. But 5 or 6 generations of breeding from that particular genetic, and you'll have bees that abscond during the dearth, or that swarm with wads of little bitty softball sized swarms that will all have virgin queens in them, and you'll be shocked at how well they survive. The little bitty softball sized swarms.
I also find the runniness. If you smoke them on one side, they'll all run out up the side.
Right.
The other side, they're just crazy. Smoke them over here, they'll
Yep.
all run back up out the other side. It's hard to get a lid on them.
Right. And those bees I was talking about having, I don't know, yesterday, I might have talked about it the first day too. Smoke made absolutely no difference. I thought that it would until I saw that it didn't. I would smoke the hive, and rather than going in the hive and sucking up honey, they all would run out of the hive into the grass. Now, that's kind of freaky when you see that for the first time. And I was thinking, wow, this you guys are crazy. And one thing about those hives, those 48 hives that I had, one thing about them, it made inspecting the frames a real easy job because there wasn't no bees on them. You could see exactly what everything was and didn't even have to have a veil on. There wasn't any, all the bees was out here in the weeds. And that's probably where Josh got his name, bees in the weeds. But with those types of bees, the only difference smoke will make is when they tag you with alarm pheromones, smoking where they tagged you, and that masks that pheromone. That's the only benefit you get from smoke with those kind of bees. And if you keep raising bees from runny bees, you will eventually get there. That's why I don't. I have very little pity on bees that are runny on the comb like that. I'm just not putting up with it. There's a lot of things that I have to put up with. That ain't one of them.
So, from a commercial beekeeper's point of view, you're looking for most probably things a little bit differently than what us residential beekeepers would be looking for.
I do, yeah.
Well, just out of curiosity, what are you looking for as a commercial beekeeper? I guess getting prepared for almonds and stuff like that.
my focus comes down to one particular thing: the largest population that I can keep in a hive as early as I can get that large population. Now, you have to break that out into subsets, and what you have to get a large population. Number one, you got to have a productive queen that starts early. You've got and don't stop.
And that's taken care of by your June queens, your
Yep, and it's taken care of by knowing by having a type of bee that you can stimulate, that you can feed and get the desired result. Feed them and population blows up. That's the one thing I want. But if they're not healthy, they won't ever get there. So you got to have a healthy hive with a laying queen that broods up quick, and make sure they don't run out of the food that they need. And those, those three things, if you take care of those three things, then you'll have a large population of bees as early as possible.
So, what is a healthy colony to you? What do you see when you take that lid off and you say, "I'm looking for a healthy colony"? What are you looking at?
Well, I have people ask me, how in the world can you inspect 400 colonies and even know what's happening in any of them? And it's a difference in how you approach the inspection. I take the lid off the colony, take the second, I get right down to the brood nest. I don't look at anything until I get right down to the brood nest. If I look in the second story, second deep, and you can look in it and you can see there's brood there, I'll take a frame out. I take a frame right out of the middle of the brood nest. And see, I walk up to a hive, to a pallet, 4 hives, take the lid off, take the honey supers off, 1 minute tops to do that. Take a frame out of the middle, and if there is large larvae on it, then that's what I look for, large larvae, because they're old enough to have been exposed to a lot more pathogens and diseases than the young larvae have. The only thing there is if you have European foul brood, it never gets to be large larvae. But large larvae, it's got to be bright white and in a concentric curl. And if there's any large larva that's twisted looking or lying lengthwise in the cell or off colored, then that hive's sick. And at that point, I look for eggs, make sure there's a queen in there. And a good part of the time, I'll take that first frame out of the middle of the hive, and you never remove the frame any faster than a bee can crawl. Taking it out, that keeps you from crushing the queen. And you kind of break the frames apart where that you get a little bit of room to bring that out. And most of the time, looking at that first frame, I'll see large larvae. I might see eggs, might not. I might have to go to a second frame to find eggs. Once I see eggs and large larvae, I know what's going on in the hive, and I can put the whole thing back together. And you're talking 5 minutes tops per hive to evaluate it. And it might take me, and that 5 minutes includes treating it if I have to treat it for something, because I'll have the treatment right there at the truck, where I always take everything you're going to need that you would possibly need with you to the bee yard. And that way you can fix whatever problem, and fix the problem while you're there. If you wait until you go to the house for lunch, you may not come back and do the things that you thought you were going to have to do. So if the larva is sick, treat it. Leave the honey supers off. If you have to use an antibiotic, treat it. If you think it might have European foul brood, look for the very small larva and look for discolored larvae. And that's European. Yep.
I actually found that video and I sent it to Josh. But remember that frame last year that me and Sterling saw that had that really good European foul brood?
Yep.
To it?
Yep.
I found that video. If anybody wants to see what that frame looks like, let me know before we go out there and I'll show it to you. But
It looked like there was old larva in that though. There wasn't, Kent? That wasn't old larva?
the one
The
that I
brown,
sent you this
yeah, the
morning,
one you sent me.
Yeah, no, that's newer stuff.
It is?
Yeah, there were
Okay.
some that were older that
It
were
looked
in
like-
there, but
okay.
I mean, those had, the discoloration had already been there for several days.
Okay.
I can't-
Why is it the European foul brood prevents the larva? It just destroys them early on.
European foul brood and American foul brood are both bacterial, and both of them act in the same way. They leach nutrition from the midgut of the bee, and we think American foul brood has to be way worse, but it's not. It's slower. European foul brood kills the larva so fast, or it leaches all the nutrition, and the bees that are feeding those larvae, that always happens at 4 and 4.5 days old for the larva. So 7 to 7.5 days from the day a queen lays an egg, if it's got European foul brood, it'll be dead. That larva will be dead. So the bees that are feeding that larva are feeding the larva and saying, you ain't growing. You're not responding to this food the way that you're supposed to, and they quit feeding it. And the larva, your European foul brood bacteria, keeps growing in the midgut, but there quits being food for it to grow on, and the whole larva dies. That's European foul brood. American foul brood, exactly the same thing. The bees quit feeding that larva, but the American foul brood is growing so slow that it's the pre-pupal stage, that it's after the cell is capped, but between the larva and pupal stage, in the pre-pupal stage, when it finally kills that pre-pupa, because it's growing slower. But both of it come because the bees quit feeding the larva, and the pathogen is sucking up all the nutrition, and the bees are like, you're a waste of time.
It's horizontally transmitted, correct?
All of it is horizontally transmitted. It's all from bee to bee, and it's all through digestion. It's all through the digestive system. The bacterial diseases are primarily introduced through digestion. The viral diseases, the majority of viral diseases are actually transmitted through reproduction.
Vertically.
Yeah, vertical transmission, which makes them very hard to deal with.
Requeening to fix European foul brood is an indirect fix because you're creating a brood break. Is that
And
right?
requeening is the solution for European foul brood, the old-timey solution for European foul brood, for nosema, for chalk brood, all of those. The requeening was the go-to for years and years and years. But it was not the requeen. It was not the fault of the queen.
Right.
When you requeen, you get that brood break of 5 or 6 days. Larva, all of these things are introduced into the larva when the larva is a specific age. All of these bacterial diseases especially, and fungal diseases too, they have to go into the midgut while the midgut lining will accept it. And that's between 48 and 52 hours old. There's a 4-hour window for these things to infect the midgut of a honeybee larva between 48 and 52 hours, because before 48 hours, the midgut lining is not developed, and there's nothing there for the pathogen to attach to. After 52 hours, it's developed enough that it will just digest it and send it right through the system. But in that 4-hour window, these spores, bacterial diseases and fungal diseases, it's primarily spores that are infecting the midgut. And the spores can attach to the midgut lining before it's fully developed. And that carries through the entire lifespan of that larva, pupa, bee. Some of those things, like European, kill it at 4.5 days old. It never gets out of the larval stage. American foul brood kills it in the pre-pupal stage. Chalk brood don't have an effect until it's already a fully developed pupa. And nosema, it doesn't really kill the bee. It just weakens it and allows it to spread as an adult, spread the nosema to other bees in the hive. So the brood break, if you eliminate the host, then you eliminate the pest. If there's no place for the pest to park itself, then you've eliminated the problem.
So in theory, treating with formic acid could almost indirectly correct European foul brood, right?
Yeah, it could. I mean, in theory, but in theory, I'm
It's creating a brood break, right?
Yeah, but it's only a couple of days.
Oh, you need a longer brood break than that to
No.
cure European foul brood?
No, because if you have a brood break of 2 days, then 2 days is 48 hours,
Oh, fair.
and you're going to, if you have a brood break of 2 days, then the queen's going to lay other eggs. By the time those eggs are old enough for the larva to be 48 hours old, you're up to 96 hours.
Okay.
And that's the requeening thing. Formic acid, you're going to have at least a 2-day brood break with formic acid.
Yeah, I know it wouldn't be the go-to fix, but that's why you've said brood breaks aren't necessarily a bad thing.
Brood breaks are actually a tool that we should use more. We should.
So then, other than the brood break or requeening, what are you going to do?
Well, other than a brood break or requeening, for bacterial disease, you're going to use antibiotics. Or you can create this same situation with powdered sugar. You can sprinkle powdered sugar on all of the brood, all of the open brood. The bees are going to remove all of that, and you can have your same queen in there, but you have created a brood break by doing that, or you can treat with antibiotics.
Such as
Terramycin.
Theramycin, right? Yeah.
Terramycin or Thailand, either one are labeled for use for that problem. You can't have honey superzone when you treat with those. And you got to have a veterinarian's feed directive, unless you know commercial beekeepers that will have pity on you and give you some terramycin.
yeah, like my horse veterinarian across the road from me.
Right.
That's what he did. He
We had that issue last year, chalk brood and European
Yeah.
foul brood. Powdered sugar cleaned it up.
Yep.
It went away. They cleaned all the cells out.
Yep.
Made it right back to normal after that.
It's just the open brood that they'll remove?
Yeah.
Because obviously the
Just
powdered sugar isn't getting rid of the
anything that you have contaminated, they'll remove it. Yeah.
I got a newbie question.
Yeah.
When you're talking about a brood break, is that a period of time where she's just not laying or something?
Right.
That's what
That's
is?
right.
It's not a physical tool or nothing. It's just a
Nope.
period of time.
Now you can cause that by a physical tool, but
What was that?
Cage the queen.
catch the queen and cage her, or mash the queen and put a new one in.
accidentally.
You're going to get a brood break.
So do brood breaks happen naturally, or are you encouraging it, or?
You're encouraging it. Yeah, you're encouraging it.
She don't want to stop.
There are brood breaks during the year, during a dearth. A lot of times the queen quit laying during a dearth of nectar. And
Is that like in August? Is that August?
yeah, that's August. Yeah. In West Kentucky, that's August.
Early October
Yeah.
around here.
Yeah.
That'll be the same in Palmersville.
Same in Palmersville. Yeah.
Okay, about August. That's when they get mean too, ain't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometime?
Well, they
help with Tropilaelaps too, right?
they help. They won't kill it. They won't kill out Tropilaelaps, but it helps. I mean, it will lessen the population of Tropilaelaps, but the theory now is, since they're finding Tropilaelaps in swarms on ships that have no brood, that Tropilaelaps does not have to have brood to survive. And what their theory is that the Tropilaelaps are surviving the same way small hive beetles survive in beetle jails. that they're begging for food at the mouth part of the bees, and the bees are feeding nectar to the Tropilaelaps. And see, Tropilaelaps, same way with the small hive beetles that we were talking about a while ago. Tropilaelaps won't be reproducing by just getting nectar, carbohydrates, but they will stay alive. That's the theory. Nobody has sat there and watched this happen, but that's the theory, because they had to, it's always a moving target with researchers and scientists. It's always a moving target because they say, well, we're not really wrong about what we said before, but it didn't happen the way we thought it would. Before they started finding these swarms, which disproved their earlier hypothesis, the early hypothesis was Tropilaelaps must have capped brood to survive in a hive, because they don't reproduce outside of a capped cell, and they're only outside of a capped cell about 4 to 5% of their lifespan. And the bee emerges, and the Tropilaelaps just a jailbreak, and they just filter into other uncapped cells just before they're capped. And I mean, it's a very short amount of their lifespan that's spent outside of a capped cell. So the hypothesis was, well, they must not be able to survive outside of a capped cell because they're feeding on the hemolymph of pupa. And larva and pupa. That's what they feed on. Their mouth parts can't pierce the exoskeleton of the honeybee, of an adult bee, but it can a pupa or a larva. And so they're feeding on the hemolymph, the blood, of the bee pupa or bee larva. And so the hypothesis was, well, they can't survive if they don't have a food source. They can't survive outside of capped brood. Then they started finding these swarms on container ships that had Tropilaelaps in them that were seemingly unaffected, and they had to change their hypothesis. Now, they weren't wrong, except that they were wrong, and I truly do admire these brilliant people that make all these theories and projections and point us in the directions that maybe we ought to go. But I would really, really like to hear one time, one of these super smart people say one time, well, I was wrong about that. Because I have to say that a lot. And I would just like to have somebody else that's way smarter than me to say that, well, I was wrong about that. And whether they say it or not, they were wrong about that. Tropilaelaps are living in swarms on these container ships without capped brood. So I can kind of go along with what they're thinking now, that they're feeding at the mouth parts of the bees.
But if brood is present, they're going to spend 95% plus of their life under capped brood.
Yep.
So is formic acid the only go-to treatment in these countries that have tropy?
Yep.
That's it.
That and just removal of the frames of brood.
Okay.
But when I was in New Hampshire with these good people over here that have made this treacherous trek down here to hillbilly land. When I was in New Hampshire, I talked to a beekeeper friend of mine that is an assistant to the state apiarist up there, and he had just returned from a workshop at Auburn University for Tropilaelaps. And this is why I love talking to groups like this, because I usually learn as much stuff as you guys are learning. But I was talking to Dave, and he asked me if I'd heard about these, how to test for Tropilaelaps. No, probably not. I know some about Tropilaelaps, but since you've just been to that workshop, I obviously could be educated. So, does everybody know what bald brood looks like? Yeah.
It's where they open it, they
Yeah.
detect something's wrong.
Yeah.
It's a hygienic.
You're
trait.
looking at the head of a pupa
Yeah.
in there. Well, he said when you see a patch of ball brood where all of it has been opened, then take a piece of duct tape, find some capped brood adjacent to the patch of ball brood, put the duct tape on press it down against the cappings, and pull the duct tape off, rips off all those cappings all at once. If you've got Tropilaelaps, they're going to just be boiling out of there.
So that you can see them with
Yep.
naked eye.
Oh yeah, you can see them with your naked eye when there's a whole carpet of them coming across your frame.
But they're microscopic.
If there's just
They're-
a few of them, you won't see them, but when you pull that
They're
duct tape
smaller
off,
than
they're gonna
Varroa.
come out like
Yeah.
like you stepped on a hard
No,
Right.
here's
Like
the
a
patch.
fire ant hill.
Yeah,
Tape.
yeah.
That's what these guys would
That's the analogy down
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
yeah, like kicking a fire ant hill.
Ones that are open,
But
they've already reproduced and gone.
then what to do about it? The formic acid is the only tool that we have that will work underneath the cappings.
And they're a third the size.
Yeah, they're tiny.
Varroa.
They're
Yeah.
third in size, and they move really fast.
And they're prolific reproducers. Don't they reproduce much faster than Varroa
They,
destructor?
they reproduce a little quicker than
Okay,
Varroa,
but more.
But the difference is one Tropilaelaps mite is going to be more reproductive than one Varroa mite, but not hundreds of times. The difference is you're going to have 50 Tropilaelaps going into one cell,
Okay.
and all reproducing 7 to 10,
Okay.
and rather than having one female Varroa going into a cell
Like one foundress Varroa produces on average 1.5, right?
in worker cells.
In
yeah.
worker cells. Okay. But a Tropy's way more.
Tropilaelaps are quicker maturing than that, and there's more of them that are going to go into that cell. Maybe not 50, but there's more of them that are going to go into each individual cell.
When you said adjacent, you mean around that spot, or do you mean across the other
No,
frame?
just well, either one really. I mean, but I was really talking about around.
Just on that
When you have ball brood here, put your duct tape here.
about okay.
Yeah.
So on the same frame.
Yeah,
But it's my
I'm
understanding
gonna
they're
give him a
not
black
in the
eye.
US yet.
yet.
They haven't been found.
That's the operative word. Yet. Yeah.
Where did they come from?
Asia.
Asia, of course.
Asia. Everything comes from Asia.
Yeah.
They'll have a little tag that says
the
made in
special-
China.
A special gift from you from China.
The container ships.
Yeah.
They were found
yeah.
on a container ship coming from Asia, and they were stopped on their way to New Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The closest swarm that they found was parked off the shore of Northern California. And it was parked there for the specific purpose of checking for contaminants. Yeah. And it was 25 miles off the coast.
It'll get here for sure.
Well, they'll be here. When you start hearing USDA or the government talking about, when we start hearing, general public starts hearing talk about something, they know it's coming, or they know it's already here. It's already planned. That they already have plans in place for it. It's just that they didn't want to tell us that 90% of us are actually aliens yet.
Now, the thing is, there's so many containers on one ship, and there's so many ships. If you're not into transportation, you don't even think about the math of it. It's going to be impossible to stop it.
Yeah, and eventually they'll be here. Eventually, and when they first get here, it's going to be devastating to the beekeeping industry. But I'm confident that the beekeeping industry can survive it because we survived tracheal mites, and now our genetic base is probably going to be severely impacted. In 1987, we got tracheal mites here, and it killed 90% of the bees in the United States. 90%. Nobody knew how to handle the bees. Had no idea what to do with it, and by the time beekeepers knew what was going on, the bees were done for. And it was an easy fix, but if you're not prepared to be fixing it when it first gets here, you're going to get whacked by it. So we lost 90% of our genetic base for honeybees in 1987, between 87 and 89. In 1989, then varroa mites came. We lost 90% of what we had recovered from. So 10% of 10% is 1%. And up until we started importing Russian bees, and Sue Colby helped a whole lot with this by not importing bees, but importing the genetic material from bees in Yugoslavia and the Caucasus Mountains and Italy, also Italy. Her and a couple of other prominent bee breeders, until the Russians and Sue Colby and other breeders started importing material, we had 1% of the genetic diversity that we had before then. And they only started doing that somewhere around 15 years ago. So, and you start mulling that over in your head, and things start getting more clear about why our bees are susceptible to so many things that didn't used to kill them. Why does nosema have such an effect now that it didn't have? You never heard of nosema killing bees back in the 1850s. Up until tracheal mites came, the only thing you really worried about was swarming and American foul brood. That was it.
Wow.
Up until
nice.
Up until tracheal mites came. And I never experienced that because I started keeping bees in between the two mite cycles. But I did experience it because I had bees in northern Ontario for 4 years, and they were totally mite free. And there was nothing up there that killed bees except American foul brood, and they kept a very tight rein on that, and bears.
Yeah.
Which is why I came back to Kentucky.
Wait, you don't have bear here?
Out east we do.
Yeah.
They don't cross that river.
Yeah, not out here.
Yeah.
We don't.
We have some stray bears that wander through here every summer, every fall, but they're dumb bears. They don't know what's in these hives out here. We don't have any problem with bears like that. In northern Ontario, bears are opportunists, and anything that looks like it maybe had some food in it at some time gets destroyed.
Yeah, that's us.
That's you.
We all have every single bee, well, not every single, they should, but we all have electric fences at our houses.
Yeah.
Around our hives.
Well, they have exceptional sense of smell.
Yeah. In Ontario, I handled the bears for 4 years because I took a lot of lessons from Ontario beekeepers. And when you go to someplace different, when in Rome, do what the Romans do. And that's the smartest thing that you can do. And in beekeeping, if you want to be successful beekeeping, find somebody that's doing what you want to do and is successful at it, and follow what they're doing. And I don't care if you do stuff the way I do or not. I'm moderately successful, but not 100% of the time. But if you're finding somebody else, Bob Benny, for instance, or people like Bob Benny in your area that are keeping bees where you live, where you're going to keep bees, do what they're doing. And so I did what the rest of the Ontario beekeepers were doing. Of course, there were no beekeepers where I had bees. That's 250 miles north of Lake Superior. But you take pop cans and leave a rim about that much at the bottom of the pop can and make a tab. Fold that tab over your electric fence and put bacon grease in that cup. And hang those about every 10 or 15 feet around your electric wire, about this high off the ground, because that's where a bear's nose normally stays. And the bear will be attracted to the bacon grease smell because they have a phenomenal sense of smell. And you know that you have done the right thing. It's got to be an electric fence, but you know that you've done the right thing when about one bear length from your fence, there's bear poop. Because the bear grabs a hold of that bacon grease can and it literally shocks the poop out of it. So that worked fine until the guy that was watching the fence, he was afraid it was going to short out my solar-powered fencer because they were predicting a big snow. It would not have shorted it out, but he turned it off, and it's going to be really cold, so he decided to go to Cincinnati to winter out with friends down there. And the bears woke up before he came back.
Guess what happened?
Yeah, it was a lesson for sure.
In PA, they'll pay to replace your.
They'll pay for you to put the fence up, but you gotta wrap bacon around it.
They want you to put bacon on it. So basically, bait the bear to there.
Well,
Right.
That's what he was doing.
I know that. I'm saying in Pennsylvania right now, the state will give you money
To put up a fence.
to put up a fence, but you have to you have to put the bacon on there.
So you gotta buy
You have to keep it on there.
Yeah,
We don't want to bait them to there.
Use beekeeper.
yeah, we bait our fence.
I don't
Yeah.
want to bait
Lasts
them
most
to
of the
it.
summer.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah,
Is the government paying for the bacon or are you paying for the bacon?
So I don't
We
know.
gotta
I don't
pay
know
for
if that's in
bacon.
the.
It
we
might
might-
be worth it.
That's what I'm saying.
Bacon,
If you
bacon.
don't bite them, they're still gonna show up anyway eventually, right?
Yeah, they'll get shocked by
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
fence we do have. So.
well, it's amazing how strong a bear is, because I had there were about 40 metal T-posts driven in the ground, had a high tensile fence around them, insulated on insulators. It was all electrified. Had a ground fence that the bear would be standing on, when it came up to the high tensile fence. And my solar charger was on the inside of the bee yard in a bee box. Well, the part of it was battery was in a bee box. The solar panel was on outside of a bee box, inside the fence. The bear gets in there, tears everything up, gets hung in the fence, pulls every one of those T-posts out of the ground, drags it a half a mile out into a thick woods. And I was like, man, I'm not leaving that $300 fencer up here. I knew I was leaving all this other junk up here. I was not leaving that $300 fencer up here. I walked out in the woods. It's easy to track him because it dragged down everything as he was going. But he got hung in a brush pile and got loose from it. And I brought my electric fencer back. A friend of mine that had gone up there with me to help work the bees, well, he helped clean up the carnage. But he said, what would you have done if that bear was still hung in that fence? And I said, I was so mad by the time I got there, I killed him with a pocket knife. But truth is, I don't know what I'd have done if he'd been hung in that fence.
All tangled up.
I'd have probably surrendered the fencer to him and just gone back to the truck. But 48 hives that were very productive hives. Phenomenal honey flow up there. Fireweed and sweet clover and white clover and all sorts of different honey producing plants. The honey flow lasted from roughly from Memorial Day until around the second week of August. That was all the flow that you got. I guess you guys have a similar season.
It's not a real wet spring. Yeah, we'll have a nice flow like that.
Yeah. Well, let's go out and get in a beehive and catch bees. We'll do the bee catching first. Bee catching and bee marking first. And by that time, it might be lunchtime. Whether it is or whether it's not, we will make a cell builder. I'll talk about making a cell builder. We might start it out here this time, but this will be mostly about inspection and catching bees.